Hello everyone and welcome to a really wild game from the Pro Chess League. It is the former women's world champion Alexandra Kosteniuk and also former women's rapid champion. I think she won the rapid championship in 2021 versus Magnus Carlsen, the still reigning world champion. It's quite a game, and the two of them have faced each other so far 4 times, and the result is 3-1 in Magnus's favor. She defeated Magnus in 2009 in the World Blitz Championship, and it was quite a brutal game. She defeated him with the black pieces, and it's the first time Magnus actually won the World Blitz Championship. He won it 3 full points ahead of Vishwanathan Anand, but he lost a very nice game to her. So this is a chance for her to level the score a little bit. So let's see what happened in the game. She opened with pawn to e4. We have pawn to c5. Magnus goes for the Sicilian defense. Knight to f3. We have knight to c6, and now bishop to b5. In their game where Kosteniuk defeated Carlsen, she went for d4. It was also a Sicilian defense. But here bishop to b5, and of course we all know what Magnus plays against the Rossolimo or against the Nimzovich-Rossolimo attack. He goes for pawn to g6. We have castles, bishop to g7, c3, and pawn to a6. Now challenging the bishop, she captures on c6, bishop captures, d captures, and now standard here is d3 or d4, but also pawn to h3, which she goes for. This allows Magnus to just grab more space with e5, and now he controls the d4 square. And now d3 is a known move, also queen to e2 is a known move, but she plays knight to a3, and it is now as of move 7 that we have a completely new game. We have queen to c7 by Magnus. You could also try to play around this knight move, maybe with a move like b5, preventing knight to c4, or you could maybe go for the very annoying queen to d3. But if you don't know if it works, Magnus just sticks to what works. He knows c7 square is excellent for the queen in this line. Pawn to d3, and now knight to f6. Or maybe Magnus even knows the entire line with knight to a3, and he knows that maybe queen to c7 is better than queen to d3. We can never know how deep Magnus's knowledge really goes. Bishop to e3, we have knight to d7 now. And now queen to d2, preparing to trade off the dark square bishops after Magnus castles. That's exactly what happens. We have castles and the bishop to h6. So this is a very strong bishop. Of course, you want to trade it and somehow try to attack the black king. The ideal setup is you want to get your queen to h6 and somehow put your knight on g5 and, of course, checkmate the black king. Of course, that's easier said than done. We have rook to e8 by Magnus, and now bishop captures, king captures, and now knight to c4. So now that the knight is on c4, Magnus executes b5. We have knight to e3 and knight back to f6. You no longer need the knight on d7 to guard the c5 pawn. So c4, it's a move you maybe would rather avoid because you leave your d3 pawn a bit weak. But okay, she does have a plan on how she wants to play around that. c4, we have b4 by Magnus, which is extremely strong as it prevents white from executing b4. So b3 and pawn to a5. We have pawn to a3 now, preparing to open up the a file, and bishop to e6 by Magnus. Queen to b2 now, nicely aligning the queen with the black king, so you have to be careful of some sacrifices, and also the pawn here is just hanging for the moment. It's attacked twice and defended once. So knight to d7 again, Magnus defends it, and now a captures on b4. We have c captures, keeping the a file closed. At some point you will have a4, and then regardless of what happens, you're either getting the passed a pawn or the passed b pawn, or white will capture and then you again get the passed b pawn. So Magnus knows that at some point in the future of this game he is getting a passed pawn on the queen side. And here we have knight to g5. Basically, a solid way to go would be pawn to d4. It makes sense. You just open up this diagonal. For example, e captures. Now if queen captures, pawn to f6, and if knight captures, then again pawn to f6, and basically f4. And white is very solid here. However, she went for knight to g5 instead, putting pressure on the bishop here. Magnus plays f6, strengthens the e5 pawn. Knight captures, we have rook captures, and now pawn to d4. But now it's a little bit different, and it's very, very subtle why it's different. E captures on d4, queen captures, and now queen to d6. Looks like a pretty standard move, but it's extremely strong because it's very unclear how to continue this game for white. The problem is if you just double up, let's say play rook f to d1. Magnus will trade, captures, and play knight c5. And the two weaknesses on b3 and d4 cannot be defended. You're just going to lose a pawn and you're going to lose the game. Another reason why it's very hard to parry this is because if you trade queens, which is another pretty basic idea, rook captures. There's again, how do you counter knight to c5? You could go for knight to c2 with the idea of knight captures on b4 because the a pawn is pinned, but still knight c5. And if knight captures on b4, just knight captures on b3. Again, you have your passed a pawn. Doesn't really matter where the rook goes. Even if you attack the knight pawn to a4, you have a monster pawn here. You have a monster knight here. It's a beautiful position for white. It will be very hard to hold. So instead, she went back, queen to b2, and it makes sense. Okay, you do want to keep the queens on the board, as Magnus's king is a bit more loose than the white king on g1. We have queen to e5. Again, Magnus offers a queen trade, and queen to d2. Again, she declines and attacks the knight on d7. Rook to d6, attacks the queen, queen to c1, and now pawn to h5. And now it's very difficult to make a move here with white. How do you proceed here? Is there a good way to deal with this position? The e4 pawn is still hanging, so obviously there's that. But the knight to c5 move, once it lands, again your b3 and e4 will become very weak. So she knows she's gonna have to give up some material, so she decides to give up material, but on her own terms. She plays pawn to c5, which frees up the c4 square for the knight. And okay, Magnus accepts. Queen captures on c5. Now comes knight to c4, attacking the rook. Rook to d4, and now rook to d1. Now you can't go after d4 pawn because, again, the knight on d7 hangs. And Magnus plays pawn to a4. Now is the moment where the pass pawn will be created. And here she played rook captures on d4. A nice idea also was just rook captures on a4. Because, well, especially because the knight on d7 is very vulnerable. And now if Magnus trades, let's say rook captures, b captures, and queen captures because you don't have a better move, you just trade queen captures on c4, rook captures, and now rook captures on d7 with check. King h6, rook to b7 will put pressure on the b pawn. Let's say captures on e4. Now king comes into the game, and now pawn to c5, but she would also have the passed a pawn, which would be sufficient for a draw. However, in the game after this a4 move, rook captures on d4 was played. Let's not forget that this is rapid chess. And now comes queen captures on d4, and she basically forces Magnus into a winning position. And here, again, you could play rook captures on a4. If rook captures, b captures, and then something like knight to c5 comes, again, puts pressure on both the e pawn and the a pawn. But maybe it would be possible to hold a bit easier, but not hold. Maybe it would be possible to survive a bit longer. But here she played queen to e1. She's going for the attack, so you have to be very careful what you do here. But Magnus just plays knight to c1. The real threat is rook to d1, just putting pressure on the queen and the knight. So knight to c5, and now rook to d1 attacks the queen, and queen to c3, just offering a queen trade and being very annoying. We have queen to e2, a captures on b3. Magnus creates a passed pawn. We have pawn to e5. She breaks through the black king's defenses, but now just rook to a1 will get at least one of the attackers off the board. So e captures on f6 with check. King captures, and now rook captures on a1. We have queen captures on a1 with check. King to h2, and now queen to d4. So nicely centralizing the queen. And now if you count the pawns, Magnus is up 2 pawns. Okay, this is a double pawn, so maybe you can count that as 1 pawn. But either way, if you don't have the attack, you are losing this game. So she plays pawn to g3, preventing any checks, and now comes knight to d3. And now, okay, the f2 pawn is hanging. Queen to f3 with check, king to g7, and now you really have ran out of moves. There's really not much you can play here. If you just defend the pawn with king to g2, it's not all that spectacular. Knight to e1 check will pick up the queen. If you play something like king to g1, then the knight here hangs. So combining all of this, it's very hard to find a move. She played queen captures on c6. It defends the knight, but now you have to give up the f2 pawn. So here, queen captures on f2 check was played, king to h1, queen to g3, now threatening knight to f2 checkmate. Here she played queen to d7 with check. Magnus played king to h6, and he was in this position on move 43 that Alexandra Kosteniuk resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Knight to f2 check is coming, so it will either be checkmate, as there are no more useful checks. You could play something like this, but we said what we think about moves like that on this channel. So this is either checkmate, or you play something like queen f7, and then you have to give up the queen after check. But of course, again, that is pointless. So yeah, very nicely done. Their fifth game goes to Magnus. So now the head-to-head score is 4-1 in Magnus's favor. So we'll see what happens in the future. So yeah, very nicely done. It seemed like she wanted to avoid going into an equal endgame against Magnus, and she just wanted to keep the position more alive. She wanted to keep attacking chances on the board, and at some point she just lost the thread of the game, especially when Magnus just found this very elegant queen to d6 move. Just, you know, absolutely stunning. Simple but elegant. So yeah, once again, I really hope you guys enjoyed this today. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Alexandra Kosteniuk no longer represents Russia. She switched federation. She's now representing Switzerland. So if you guys are interested in that. But yeah, I would like to thank Seshadri Rajan, Barry Day, Lobo, Ravishing Reptiles YouTube, and Gel Wildiers for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.